So we light the candle for the Jewish religion.
To the glory of the omnipresent God, we kindle this light, symbolically representing the Hebrew religion.
There are so many prophets of Israel who are familiar to us, who are dear to us, who are part of our being, of whom we are part, of whom we are the expression, whose beings have marked us, maybe for many incarnations. They live in us inasmuch as we are able to reach them. Noah remains a very remote figure, somehow saved humanity from utterly being wiped away from the surface of the earth. Abraham is an archetype of manhood. Represents one of the great pioneers upon which a great part of civilization has been based. He represents the covenant between God and man that seems to be a preliminary to the guidance of the masters, saints and prophets of mankind. He's called the friend of God, and his greatness was certainly derived by his having been chosen as the most apt one to act as a go-between God and man, albeit that he was sanctified and consecrated by that unforgettable figure of Melchizedek, who is the priest of all religions, continually present at every religious ceremony. And every religious ceremony is simply a reminder, a reenactment of the Great Covenant. It is a way of renewing our promise to serve the masters, saints and prophets. Melchizedek, the priest of Salem, which means the city of peace, the celestial Jerusalem, that great chakra on the surface of the planet that is Jerusalem today. And who crowned Abraham as the Kutub of the planet in his time, as the King of Kings, was get into the spirit of the majesty of the great ones who have had charge of the government of the world. And then Moses, terrifying in his greatness for having challenged the king, the Pharaoh, who imagined himself to be God. It is the work of the Prophet to come as a warner, to stand as a warranty against those who will deviate from the government, from the trend that is, the impulse that is given to humanity by the prophets, by God, through the prophets. Well, we can enter into the spirit of Moses. If you can just feel that staunch spirit who had rested so completely upon the divine power in his challenge against the Pharaoh in order to lead his people into the promised land, what that meant. That's what we mean by the message. He was bringing evidence of the power of God. Just like Elijah did with King Ahab, same thing. Wherever materialism stands in the way of the progress of humanity, and especially if it inserts itself insidiously into would-be spiritualism, then the prophet comes as a warning, and he challenges that power with the might of God. And so did Elijah challenge the power of the heathens on the Mount Carmel. Elijah, whose natural place is at the source of water, the source of the spring of life, where he seeks refuge in the drought, comes out and lights the altar by the fire of his being, or the fire of God passing through his being. It's not a question of reliving history, it's a question of getting into the spirit of these prophets, because the message continues to live. And if there is anyone in whom it will live in the likes of us. It will live in the hearts of those who have been attuned to the voice of God. It will live in the hearts of those who will invoke the great pioneers and follow in their footsteps. So let us enter into the spirit of those great prophets, like Isaiah, for example. After his tongue had been burnt, his lips had been burnt by the brazen coal, and he said, "Send me," to prepare the way for the coming of the presence of God in the midst of humanity. I'm not speaking of a spectacular, dramatical dramatic descent of a man from heaven, but I'm speaking of the indwelling of the Spirit of God in the lives and the consciousness of people, which has the power to transform people into wonderful beings. Now the Christian religion emerges out of Judaism. Kyrie eleison. Kyrie eleison. Kyrie eleison. Christe eleison. Christe eleison. Christe eleison. Kyrie eleison. Kyrie eleison.